Welcome everyone to the Voice of the Terminus show. I'm Yanila and I'm joined by Joshua today. Say hello, Josh.
Hey guys.
And we have the wonderful Shy in the background.
Hello.
Shy will be gathering questions, thoughts, ideas throughout the show for us to talk about towards the end. And we're still waiting on Lexa, so we don't know when he'll show up. But Lex, if you're out there and you're watching, we're worried. Let us know what's going on, dude. So we're going to talk about the Druid today. The Archetype and Subclass. And obviously we're going to talk about what Joppa had to say in the interview with Basgrim. Specifically on the Druid. Where his only mention was basically that Druids will be kind of like in the indirect healing segment of the healer class, and we'll look at that in a bit. But before we kick off the show itself, few shout outs to everybody. So I want to give a shout out to Sacred, Sacred TV, Sacred. I think it's Sacred on Twitch. If you haven't followed him or checked him out, go check that out. Zathras, if you're here, is Zathras here? Maybe you can grab those links for us and throw those in, or anybody in chat. Grab those links, throw those into chat for Sacred TV, Basgrim as well, and same for Monster Koala on YouTube, who does lore shows, covering all the lore on Pantheon, going into some speculation, some theory craft, and some really thoughtful stuff out there. And then we've got As TV, who does some short videos. So a quick shout out to those guys for the coverage that they do. Temi as well with her lore. And we'll be talking about those people on Tuesday when we do our tavern talk, which we move basically to every 3-4 months. And this Tuesday is tavern talk, where we'll talk about those in detail. Let's go and kick off this show. We're here to talk about the class, the Druid, and speculate in theorycraft a bit. But before I do that, I'm going to read off what VR's stance is on the Druid from their webpage. Amidst the fragmented realms, the wild-eyed Druid embraces the diverse natural world around them, peering into its mysteries. Druids are revered as visionaries who can see into the heart of Terminus itself. So that's the short description on the Druid. Josh, does that tell you anything? How you would see the Druid in itself? How you would picture the archetype?
Well, for me, it's a bit confusing. I would love to see what Visionary Realms' take on visionaries who can see into the heart of Terminus itself, how they interpret that for the Druid. But generally, yeah, natural, dealing with nature and working it from there. Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
And yourself?
It's it definitely touches on what I would feel, you know, where I see the Druid. You know, being revered as visionaries who can see into the heart of Terminus itself. The natural world. It definitely describes how I picture a Druid myself. The Druid for me is all about nature.
Yeah.
And animals, you know, in connection with that. So
I can see a bit of seer in it, you know, like you know, like that type of thing, being able to see into the future. I've never come across the Druid being something that could see into the future, but maybe there is something around that, you know, one with the world. If
you look at the our real life cultures, the Indians, for instance, they had Druids. You know, they would set up those tents and everything, and smoke the pipe and speak to the animals. So, on a side note, Josh, we talked about this earlier on, but you remember Defenders of the Earth?
Oh yes,
the cartoon series back in the early 80s.
Defenders of the Earth.
And there was this panther guy who wore that purple suit, and he had like the strength of the bear, speed of a cheetah, and the eyes of a hawk. And that's kind of my interpretation of how I've
always
pictured. Yep, that's how I've always pictured a druid. You know, being able to utilize the strength of a bear, the speed of a cheetah, and having the eyes of a hawk. So, and that's what, you know, a druid for me is all about. Nature, connecting to nature, knowing all the different types of plants and trees and the environments itself that he wanders in. And yeah, so
basically being at one with its natural surroundings. Exactly.
So looking at past gaming history with, you know, MMOs that you've played, with games that have had a druid, what did you enjoy your most about those?
Oh, my first encounter with a druid was actually not even computer games, but pen and paper. It was in Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition, where I actually had a druid as my character. And the way they worked it back in those days was dealing that when you got to a certain level, you would have to go and fight against the next higher level druid in order to take over his spot, because there's only a certain amount of spots in the world, so to speak, of these archdruids and these leaders within the druid community. So that was my first experience, but it was always about nature. It was always being neutral in terms of how they see the world, not taking sides in anything, but making sure that the balance of nature is respected. And heaven help you if you broke that balance. You would feel the full might of the druid coming down on you. So yeah, that was my first experience.
Yeah,
it was great. I loved the character.
Yeah, and for me, it was, you know, back to EverQuest 2. You know, the warden, going from a druid, you know, and specializing into a warden. That was my very first engagement. And that was basically the time where I fell in love with the class itself. I just loved the way the warden was approached, being, you know, a very fast, reliable healer, having a lot of connections to nature. And it was a very versatile class. Even though back in the early times of EverQuest 2, the druid was really just focused on the healing aspect of things, being of speed with its hots. But you know, later on over the years, it was one of the most versatile classes that I've played. It was so fun to be able to CC, help out the group, and even, you know, the little bits of damage that we could do later on. Even though I didn't really enjoy the fact that it became all about the DPS at the end.
Yeah,
I have to admit, though, I did enjoy me being able to mess around in those areas as well. So yeah, that was my very first experience with the druid. And obviously you had the counter class of Fury. And that's one class that I don't know, I hated it with a passion. I can't say what it is. I'm guessing it's got to do with the way that class played out in the end, being about all DPS instead of about the healing. And I think I kind of destroyed it for me with the Fury. So yeah, that's basically what my first, or what I enjoyed most about them.
I think the druid is very rarely done in most games, I think, or done properly. If we look at WoW, they've got it in there, EverQuest 2. But apart from that, it's very few games have actually tried to embrace the druid and tried to harness the druid in its games. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to see how VR actually tackle the druid and how it differs, because how it differs from all the other druid takes on it in previous games. Well, that for me is going to be key.
Well, since you mentioned, you know, Pantheon VR, what do you envision for the Pantheon druid? You know, purely going away from what Joppa's put out there, just from the pretext of information that you've had, and maybe the discussions with people and in the forums and everything. What do you envision for the Pantheon Druid? What traditional role should a Druid be strong at? Should it be a jack of all trades, but and a master of none? Should it be versatile? Should versatility limit power? And how should Druids and their powers interact with the urban environments? So, from that perspective, Josh, what do you envision?
Well, I think that the Druid foremost should be the indirect healer in the game. It should utilize its surroundings to add benefit to the parties, depending on what environment that Druid is in. So it would also then be some sort of a buff bot and an indirect healing bot, so to speak. And I think that's what its focus should be. I don't think it should be anywhere close to being in the tank or DPS range. I think if anything, it should have some sort of a range to it. Nothing hand to hand, or a bit of hand to hand. Let's put it that way. But nothing, not one or the other. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I kind of on the same page as you, but with the slight difference that that's the one thing I loved about my Druid in EverQuest 2. My Druid was skilled to be able to melee, and I really enjoyed doing that. Getting up close behind the mob with the encounter, and being close to my tank, because it was always important for me to be close to my my group, and be in a strategic position where I can help anyone. So I used to do a lot of melee DP attacks as well, auto attack, and get in there, but for the protection of the group. So that's where I would kind of differ from you, is seeing myself with the Druid being more on the melee side rather than range. That's one thing I definitely didn't like about the Warden, was that it had great skills for melee, but it was so focused on the skill trees, were so focused on the ranged abilities. It kind of like didn't quite fit. Because
But that's the beauty of the subclassing. I mean, where you can get your at the end of the day to your hand-to-hand or your close combat type of a Druid. I can have the distance support Druid, which would suit my playstyle. So I definitely feel that a Druid can definitely offer things like nature-based magic from a distance, and use its pets, perhaps, if they're going to have pets, to engage in close combat. And you can definitely also be up there fighting.
Yeah. And I love these questions that Necro put together for us with the urban environments. That definitely just says it all, though. That's where I would love to see the Druid engaged in, and being a master of. If there's one class out there that has a real great understanding towards the environments, it would be the Druid class.
Oh yes.
It doesn't matter if he's in a desert or in a frigid or in a heated area or a forest or swamp or anything. He'll have the all-round knowledge about that and be able to utilize.
Correct. I mean, any environment, the Druid should be able to find a balance with it and focus on being one with that specific region.
Yeah.
In my mind.
So let's go and have a look at some of the abilities and spells before we get into Joppa's slight indication on indirect healing. Druids rely heavily on nature. A Druid's bond with nature is their strength and power, and often a part of their personality. So, what spells or abilities are iconic and must be included for the Druid to be considered proper? And he's put down some example categories for us to talk about: cures and healing, support and buffs, damage spells, lightning, fire, desiccation, blight, swords, thorns, control spells, root, snare, firefly, mesmerize, animal summons, polymorphs, and shape-shifting teleports. So what's your take on that? Where do you see the iconic ability or abilities, one of the iconic abilities for a druid?
Well, I think the number one thing that'll stick in everybody's mind from at least EverQuest and EverQuest 2 is probably Thorns. That is one of the main spells I think that everybody would know. And the root. Yeah. And the root spells. So definitely, those are definitely buff and support type class spells that the druid would have. And yourself?
Well, you know, there's another ability that everybody loved about the druid. So.
Oh, Spirit of the Wolf. Oh yeah.
You know, some kind of buff in that region, like that, gives you either. But you know, I would kind of like to see, like I mentioned earlier on, in this regard, more utility towards this. So instead of just giving the druid a Spirit of the Wolf, give him, you know, the Spirit of the Hawk, Spirit of the Bear, and then the Spirit of the Wolf. So he can actually utilize, either he gives you a strength buff, which is significant, or he gives you a run speed buff, that's pretty significant, or he gives you a buff that boosts your... I wouldn't go with field of view or anything like that with the Hawk. I'd say
accuracy.
Accuracy, yeah, something like that, baby. You know, where you have like, you know, you have sharpshooting ability where your weapon skill might not be high enough, or you know, your focus on the spells, but with his Spirit of the Hawk, it kind of enhance or help you fizzle less, kind of thing. Maybe that's how I would kind of like to see that gone.
Yeah, exactly. But there's so many ideas that they can take from that. It's not just those basics. Those are the real basics. But you could think of any type of an animal or even monster class at the end of the day. If you can get this, if you become a druid that really branches out in its what animals it can actually, powers it can harness, I don't think there's any monster that it can't try and harness its power.
Monsters in what form and fashion, Josh?
Well, let's say things like dire bears, even I don't know, dragons, things like that, where they have some sort of a touch with certain areas that they're in.
I wouldn't go that far. I think that's kind of treading on some of the other classes. You know, all being about nature and having an understanding to all that. I'd kind of, you know, where I'd see him having that connection, or she having that connection, would be towards, you know, typical wildlife animal, bears, deers, you know, hawks, bows, snakes.
Yeah, it makes more sense, right?
Tigers,
I agree.
Lions, stuff like that is where I kind of go. I wouldn't say
touch on monsters.
Yeah. So yeah, but anyway, let's go and have a look what I've come up with before we go and look at what Josh added towards this. So we're going to talk now a little bit about Joppa mentioning the druid being somewhat of a indirect healer. And as soon as I heard that, my mind just started going in circles, and you know, the cogs started going left and right, up and down. And I have a few cool ideas, concepts here that I think would make this class very interesting to play. And you could even possibly take these ideas and go into the subclass, but we'll look at that a little bit later. So let's go and start off with the first one, which I came up with. When he said indirect healing, for me it just screamed straight away, from a healing perspective, AoE healing.
Yeah.
Area of effect. So cast an AoE effect that draws from nature or its surroundings to heal in a certain radius, making for a very fun, unique playstyle. Something that will make Druids sweat, but will still be very fun. I can see that working for Pantheon with the style of the game that they've got, where instead of casting an AoE that does damage, you have an AoE that has a radius that gives out a heal.
Yeah,
and you could have all kinds of different healing abilities. You could have hots towards that. You could have a single heal towards that. You could have a ward that gets put out there. So that's how I kind of would. That's one of the possibilities that I have. Is AoE healing. I think that would make for a very unique playstyle. What do you think, Josh?
I think that it'll make for a very strategic class to play, because if you think about it, in any raid, you are going to want to make sure that you are affecting most of your raid force when it comes to that AoE heal, and B, you are not going to be killed pulling aggro from all the healing that you are going to be doing with that AoE heal. So you really have to be very clever about how you deal with the Druid and what the game throws up in terms of de-aggro with the Druid itself.
Definitely. So the next one up that I had was healing through pets.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to go back to that AoE heal, and if I think about it, I mean, you could have many types of AoE structures or focal points for that AoE area. So you could have just a normal tree with that sends out an AoE type of heal, but then your next skill up could be something that does an AoE heal, but also creates a buff for everybody within that circle, or any mobs that are in it will give a debuff on those mobs.
There's definitely plenty of ways to add to the AoE healing. Like like you mentioned some examples just now. I can even see like a damage spell that you cast or something like that, or a dot that you cast out. That's on a successful outcome, it throws out an AoE heal in a certain radius. So there's definitely many ways they can utilize the AoE healing. It doesn't have to necessarily just be a spell that you cast and on the ground, voila, you've got your heal ring in a radius that either gives you a hot, a ward, or a direct heal. They could connect that to spells, dots, damage spells. They could even, depending on what kind of spell you've got, it gives a different heal from it as well. And then connecting towards the aspect of being successful or not also adds to that challenge as well, because you might be casting that damage spell thinking that, hey, I got this, and it fizzles or it doesn't go through or it's not a successful strike. So now you're not paying attention, and your tanks or your DPSs are getting beat down. So now you're in a panic mode, because now you've got to figure out, hey, where's my heal spell? Where's my normal AoE spell that I can cast now? So it keeps you on your toes and definitely makes for that challenge, and gives us new ways to experience the outcome of the spells itself.
I'm also quite curious whether it would be possible at some point where you could have two AoE heals up at once. So where those two AoEs overlap, you get double the healing or 50% more healing within that little section.
That's also another cool idea as well. You can even add a negative to that, even to kind of keep people on their toes and add to the challenge. Like you have, let's say you can cast 2 AoE heals. You got one left, one right, but they kind of connect in, on the ends together, forming an oval shape. And anybody in there, he might get a negative benefit from that. As something to keep people on their toes, to watch what they're doing. So there's definitely ways to go about this to add, like you said, beneficial aspects to it, like double the amount of heal.
Yeah.
Or if you're in that particular circle, you don't get the hot, you get a direct heal from it.
But even better, I mean, if the Druid does deal with AoEs, one could be for healing, another one could be for some sort of a buff. And when the healing and the buff overlap, it creates a unique new area that improves the group somehow. Mm-hmm. So there's a unique section within those two overlapping sections that comes together. I mean, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah. That's definitely something to definitely look at. That's a cool idea.
And it keeps the Druid on its toes, because it has to keep those AoEs up the whole time. So it would be quite interesting to see how the Druid would deal with something like that.
So let's go have a look at the next one then. Which I mentioned earlier on, healing through pets. And the way I see this is different pets provide different ways to heal, or how a heal impacts a player or group. So you could have maybe a pet that's focused on single heal, or a pet that's focused on group healing, or a pet that's focused on heals over time, or direct heals, or warding, or basically something that through damage heals the group. So there's definitely also room here to go through the different types of.
How would you get what would be the physical healing of the pet? How would it do it, though? That's what I'd love to know. How do you see it?
Well, basically,
is it something that just radiates out from the animal, or is it something that the animal has to be within a certain radius of certain people?
Well, looking at the just from the term indirect healing, the way I see this is if you healed through pets, you'd have your pet bar, basically, and each pet would have its unique abilities, and you would basically you would be controlling the pet more than you would be controlling yourself. So you'd also have a bar there that's that you have to interact with, and play about with as well, to provide healing through that pet. That's how I kind of envisioned this, because it's all about the indirect healing for me, what Joppa said, and how this could be used to actually give that true indirect healing feeling to it. That's how I kind of envisioned it. You'd even have to go out. This is also another cool thing as well. You wouldn't just have these pets. You would have to actually go out and kind of collect them. Well, before you could use these pets to their full benefit. Go on, Shai.
Well, I was just going to remind you, in EQ2, the chamois had the little bear pet that would radiate heals. So that's something along those same lines.
You can also have maybe a pet that does radiate. Like even the warden. The warden had that little fairy that it could cast. It was I think one of the level 90 specials that you got. You would summon a fairy that lasts for 30 seconds, for instance, and it would basically throw out every 2 seconds a heal over time. And you can go all those ways. You could even go and say it just radiates a different kind of heal, or you could have it actually where you, similar to the caster, where they're the pet classes, is another way of going about it as well. So, and you could possibly do both as well, because that adds to that experience as well. It makes that class play differently than everybody else's. It makes you want to go and explore all the different classes out there by providing different unique ways to play each of these classes.
For me, the pets, when it came to healing, I would say that the pets themselves would be a supplement to your healing. So they would either enhance your healing in a certain way, perhaps as well. And you could maybe use the pet's life to do more healing, for the indirect healing for the group itself. So you'd have to carefully balance your pet's life with the amount of healing that you're pushing out at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's kind of the challenge that you could add to it. Basically, you have to keep an even balance, otherwise that pet depletes.
Yeah.
So if you keep it in an even balance and don't spam the hell out of your heals, you know, everything's good. Your pet's there. It's gonna do its job. So that definitely adds to the challenge, and that's the another great way of looking at it. You know, it's definitely a way you could go about this, with the healing through pets.
Yeah. But I also think that if you're going to have pets, it would be great to see those pets actually grow with your levels.
Yeah. So you start off like with a little small wolf.
Yeah. Or a bear cub or something like that.
Yeah, so, yeah, that would definitely be cool. And you know, that could be like the stages it goes through as you level up. And you could even go as far and say, you know, you have one druid guy playing, like Josh is playing a druid, and he loves the wolf. So his wolf pet's going to be pretty strong, whereas his other pets might not be. And she picked the bear to do all of that, and now I've got the deer or the treant or whatever to do all of this. So you can also add those kind of trademarks to it as well, where you also have to, or you can level up your pets, however you want. So everybody has their personal preference towards it as well. And to touch on again, because I think I abruptly broke that off with the actually going out and having to find these pets. So I definitely think, despite the indication of indirect healing, there's going to be some supplement of basic heal spells that the Druid's going to have. That won't be as powerful as the Clerics, or maybe as utilizing as a Shaman's, but they'll still be there. You know, this is how I would kind of supplement that and kind of bring this into play with the pets. So you wouldn't be left you wouldn't be left out from the get go until you've got a pet. You wouldn't be seen as useless. You'll still be able to heal. But once you've got that pet, that's your personal benefit. That's your speciality, and that's gonna you're gonna have to take care of it and train it and level it.
I also want to find items in the world for that pet to enhance the pet's abilities.
Yeah.
For the Druids, so you could get like a bear harness, for instance, and that would maybe boost the bear's power by 50% or something like that at the end of the day. So that way you actually, as a druid, you have your focus pet that you will level up over time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that would be great.
Definitely. So, Shai, you got anything else to add towards the healing through pets?
Nope, you guys have pretty much touched on it, on the things I was thinking. So,
all right, so we're going to look at the next one, and this is where my hate love comes into play. But we have to talk about this. There's definitely through the interactions with the community, there's definitely a lot of love when Joppa said indirect healing, and this also came into play. So healing through DPS. Most spells on successful strike provide a heal at the end of a group or single. So it's kind of what we touched on with the AoE healing, where your damage spells basically, if on a successful strike, they would all have a little heal at the end, depending on what kind of spell it is. Is it a group spell, an AoE, single spell that you're casting? So, and that's basically how you would do your healing, through DPS. So the more DPS you do, the more successful your strikes are, the better chance you're going to have of healing somebody. And there you can also add, different kinds of heals. Like you could add, heals over times, direct heals, wards, to kind of give it a bit of flavor and seasoning. So it's not just, the same old, same old. There's definitely ways you could do that. You could even go one further with through the DPS and just add buffs towards it as well. So at the end you get like a strength boost, or you get a wisdom boost depending on what class you are or whatever, that he's going to cast this on or cast this through. So
I would love to see that the Druid itself, where nature actually assists the Druid in its fighting with the thing. So, for instance, it's not even stuff that the Druid may cast. It's just stuff that he will have as an advantage of being a Druid, where if he's fighting something in the front, maybe roots are trying to snare and attack the mob from behind. So it does a small amount of damage or a debuff to the actual mob itself.
Yeah.
So in that way, it's not really a spell per se, but it's more of a enhancement of the Druid abilities.
Yeah, and I'll actually touch on that later on with nature itself, because I actually put out a poll on the indirect healing. With, the 4 suggestions that we're going to be talking about, and all of the above and other, and there were some other votes that touch on what you were talking about with the nature, but we'll get into that after we finish the last one.
Right,
this is a big one for me, and I think this would be pretty cool. I don't know if it could be done in this day and age quite yet, but I think it would be pretty neat to see something like this. Manipulating the weather and climate to heal. As an example, it rains. It's raining in a region. So now all of the heals that the Druid has at his disposal, or abilities where it has a heal, would now give the Druid the ability to heal as a hot. Or for instance, now it's thunderstorms and lightning. The energy is gathered and converted to a direct heal. Or could be used as small bursts for a heal on a single target. Or for instance, like, there's a nice wind going on, and he basically harnesses the wind's energy to heal the group. So I think that would be pretty cool to see something like that, where he takes the negative from the environment, the weather and climate itself, and turns that into a beneficial for the group. That would definitely make for a very unique and interesting class.
Yeah, definitely.
And definitely a unique healing ability. If it can be done, I would love to see that sometime in the future. Any game out there to look at that kind of aspect, healing through weather and climate.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, don't know. I'm curious to see how it would work in the subterranean areas and that type of thing, or indoors, any specific indoors. But yeah, definitely outdoors. I think that should definitely be a benefit.
Definitely. There's, and again, these are just some ideas, suggestions that we have. And another one. Okay, so what about having a mix of all of the above? So you have a bit of everything. Now the question here is, though, if you do offer that to the Druid, where he has maybe an AoE heal, or can go for an AoE heal, or go through pets, or go through DPS, or go through manipulating the weather, would that kind of put a balance issue amongst the healers?
It all depends how powerful it is, to be honest. Let's say, for instance, you have a Druid that uses a snowstorm or a snowfall to fall down on the mobs and the group itself. the group might get slight healing from the snow. The mobs might get frozen and slowed based on that. Your pet, which could be a bear, could also get slight healing from that. Ultimately, so I think that it can be done, but again, it's how VR want to balance a situation like that.
And just because you just mentioned freezing and all that good stuff, that's another way. You could also look at the weather and climate.
Yeah.
You could actually, instead of actually engaging in the weather itself, you utilize it though. So you might have a spell where it's snowing. You got a frost spell. So Josh mentioned basically the NPCs on the mobs being frozen, and it's a dot. So they get frozen. They're put in an ice shell. 30 seconds. Every 2 seconds or 5 seconds for the period of time, unless they break it, you get a hop because it's a heal over time reflecting back at you. So you draw kind of the energy or the lifespan from that encounter during its frozen state or its burning state if he has a fire spell. But before we go on and I ask you,
I just want to say one thing. It would be quite interesting it would be quite funny actually if a druid actually had a spell that could dot certain enemies with spores. And those spores would radiate out and radiate healing for the DPS guys fighting against those mobs. So that would be quite funny.
Well, actually, they did have a spell like that in EverQuest too. I think it was for the Druid itself. It was for both the Fury and the Warden. I think I cannot be 100% sure. It was called Spores.
How was it? Okay.
Yeah, it was basically a buff you casted though on a player in your group, and that would basically every time he got hit, you had a chance to give him a heal over time. But I could see that working, the opposite way, like you mentioned, as a damage spell that you cast onto the encounter, and then through that it kind of draws.
Heal.
Yeah. But the other selection, touch on the nature aspect, was a lot of people were talking about nature itself, having tree ants and trees, plants, kind of interact with the druid for him to heal. So utilizing those kind of things, vines. Also, a very interesting way to go about this, where you utilize what's around you. Surrounding to heal. So you've got trees around you, or you've got vines coming out from the ground, or roots, and kind of using those to heal. It's definitely very interesting and very D&D.
Yeah.
I have a problem though picturing how it could be done. In game.
What is the problem that you have with it though?
No, it's just how would you kind of bring it about that it makes sense and still feels connected.
Well, I think that just thinking about what you just said, where plant life actually enhances the druid itself. So in outdoors, if you're in a forest, there's going to be plants all around you, so you're going to get a natural bonus for that. Even in underground caves, you could actually have a spell that you could cast, maybe a very basic spell that you cast at the beginning, that actually grows roots from the ground. And with those roots that are just on the surface itself, would enhance your druid-like abilities. Yeah. And you could keep on enhancing these roots and making them grow bigger and bigger, and give you more bonuses throughout the fight itself. So there's I think.
Yeah, so question is, how would this work? You technically go into the zone.
Yeah.
And you automatically get this bonus. Is that how this would possibly work?
Maybe you'd have to cast something in order to get that bonus. Yeah. Because maybe the nature has to be within a certain range of you, as it is. Yeah. So you would make sure that nature envelops you and grows from that point of.
I could see that definitely working. That's definitely a good description that kind of clears it up for me. So I was definitely having a hard time, thinking about how that could possibly work, because I pictured like you'd have to have a plant that's there that you kind of click, or you have to cast something, or you have to have plants on you. You have to basically go around gathering plants from these zones and have them on your person at all times to utilize it. It's kind of very tricky for me to figure out a decent way for that to kind of work. But yeah, I definitely could. I think nature in itself should have an impact on the druid.
Yes.
I wouldn't go as far as though with the heals. I would go I would like to see that done with buffs. That the healer or the druid can put out there towards his group, because that's one thing that I always kind of missed. In EverQuest 2, the druid was kind of really useless when it came to group buffs and everything. It was really more of its utilizing itself and giving itself beneficials. But I'd definitely like to see the druid have a more impact towards the group when it comes to buffs as well. Like I mentioned earlier on, strength of the bear, eye of the hawk, and speed of the cheetah come into play, and then with nature as well. So, and that will kind of touch into some of the subclass ideas that Joshua added to this, where we talk about the regional druid. So that's where I kind of see this as well, where he has a lot of utility buffs for various regions and climates and weather.
Yes.
So before we go into all of this archetype stuff, out of these possibilities or ideas, which would you go for them? Which would you like to see most, and which do you like to see less of?
I'd probably see less of. Possibly, it all depends how they do the pets, but I'd rather see less of pet healing and more of the AoE type healing, in my mind. Secondly, would be the using the climate itself to heal as well. I'd rather use the pet as support buff and maybe DPS at the end of the day. That's how I would see it.
Yeah, for me, it's. I'm sorry, Furies, but it's healing for DPS. A druid doesn't scream violence to me.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not something that's
the
last resort. It's that would be the final resort that a druid would do, is damage. It's all about the wits and the mind and the soul and the environment itself. They're basically the monk healers, if you will. Yeah. They're all about balance, and I know a lot of people would love to see it happen through DPS. And it's going to come down to how they do it with DPS, because like Xsmoker said, that's where I see a major imbalance happen, is healing through DPS, where players will find a way to kind of skip the healing or not rely on the healing so much and be all about the DPS. That's why my love-hate towards Furies happened, because it all became about the DPS and not the actual healing, what your job is meant to be. And obviously with the support through the development, it shifted in that direction, and that's one of the biggest fears that I have, is that the outcry for more DPS for the Druid class, if that was the way they would go with the indirect healing, would possibly shift their manner towards saying, okay, we're going to try and push more DPS towards the Druid, because a lot of people are having more fun that way rather than the healing. That's kind of my biggest fear, because its main focus should be the healing.
I think it's very lazy development when they do things like that. Yeah. Because they've really gone so far away from the tenets of what a druid is and what it's meant to be at the end of the day. if it's going to just be doing, as you say, just DPS, well then rather roll up a fighter class or something like that.
Yeah.
If you're going to be intelligent about it and you are going to have some sort of DPS, well, just make sure it's through nature or pet damage or something along those lines. But yeah, I find it quite lazy for them to go that way.
And before we look at Josh's subclasses as well, these are also possibilities that you could go for subclassing. You know, you could actually have maybe the option for all of the above, where you would choose what you want to do. Do you want to be an AoE Druid healer? Do you want to be a pet? Do you want to utilize the pets side of the Druid? Do you want to utilize the DPS side of the Druid? Do you want to utilize the weather and climate? And do you want to utilize the nature itself? That's another way to subclass, or to bring in the specialization to this Druid as well. And it basically makes for a huge variety of play styles, and this also would kind of make it really interesting to see. You got one Druid who's focused on AoE healing. You got one Druid who's focused on weather and climate, or on DPS, or on pets, and that way you don't have so much of an issue with the group finding mechanic. That's always been a lackluster for me in EverQuest 2, where you had that problem where you wouldn't take two of the same class with you because the heals or the spells don't stack. The heals overwrite each other.
Yeah.
And with this approach, by going, hey, you could specialize multiple ways. You can take those two healers with you, and they'll be they'll be even stronger together because one's focused on this, one's focused on that. The play styles are different. That also adds a nice little twist and time sink to it as well, because I'd want to try them all out.
Yeah. To
be honest, I want to try them all out and see, where's the fun in all of this. And you could even go with a hybrid Druid.
Exactly.
Where you have all of the above. That's where I see the hybrid come in. The hybrid's basically the one that has a bit of all.
Yeah.
And then you can go and specialize and take yourself into a separate path going forward. So you could have your AoE healer and so forth. So that's another way I look at it. From the
I can also see pets being maybe focal points for druids, and also they could be like batteries itself for various druid or energies from nature. So they could store, for instance, lightning. Could be something that is stored maybe through its animal companion, and therefore they can take those animals down into underground areas and enhance lightning-based druid type spells. So I think there is ways of getting around the underground side of it and ensuring that they can use their spells as well.
And one thing I definitely want to see as well is the animations for these. So if they do have different buffs that have different pets, like a bear, a wolf, a hawk, they actually see those visually when you cast that buff or that spell. You actually see that coming through your body, and I could even see like an aura going as well. For the Druid, depending on what kind of, and you could even go and say, if we take the spirit of the wolf, the spirit of the hawk, spirit of the bear, depending on what kind of stance you're currently in, also has an impact on what buffs might be available to you, because you still want to try and balance this out and make for a engaging way to play this class, because with having the stance that you're in, like Spirit of the Bear, or even adding the Treant to it, which is typically the one that is used for healing. So that's your healing stance. But I wouldn't go that far. I still have the Treant in there to kind of you know, bolster maybe the healing abilities itself. So you got those 4 stances, but this way you could even have those 2 druids work together as well, because you've got one who's like focused on the bear, or he's in bear mode. You've got one who's focused on the Treant mode, so obviously his heal spells are going to be impacted, whereas anything related to strength or gives a strength bonus or benefit is related to the other druid, because he's in the bear form.
Yeah, exactly. Would you see poison as being an area where a druid can focus on as well? Because natures have poisons through mushrooms, through various fungus, etc. Do you think?
I see poison and disease.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think those are the 2. Those are where I would see the druid have its benefits, where it can counteract and actually gain knowledge from these different kinds of poisons and diseases, because you're going to find those in the world, in the wildlife, poisonous plants, trees, poisonous animals, you know, diseases from certain areas, or from dead carcasses and stuff. So that's where I see the druid having its knowledge in that area. I wouldn't go towards toxins, but disease and poison is what I see.
Okay.
So let's go and have a look at some of your subclasses that you brought up.
Okay.
So what are the different types of subclasses that Josh has also in his petto? He has the Animalist Druid, the Seasonal Druid, the Regional Druid, and the Druid of Gaia. Sounds really interesting, dude. So, do you want to talk us through the Animalist Druid?
Okay. Well, I just basically looked at for the Animalist Druid, it focused on attuning itself to the animals and beasts of the world. So, yeah, we look at the likes of the wolves or the bears, etc. And yes, you can definitely get that in Terminus. However, there could be beasts that we might not know about that are classed as animals that the druid can also focus on. And the tenets of the druid when dealing with an animist druid itself would deal on the buffs that the animal can provide. And as the animal goes up in level, it creates more buffs in turn for the group itself. And even at higher levels, the druid itself could possibly shape change into various animals as well. So in that way, it can change its form. It's very much, I wouldn't say like the WoW druid, but it is on a similar level of being able to change into other forms.
So it would be kind of like a jack of all trades.
Yeah, I guess. I just don't want it to be something that can be high DPS, high tanking, high things like that, because that's not the thing. But it's more of a case of, well, I want to, I can change into something that gives me speed. I can change into something that'll just.
The way I can see this, again, touching on the pets as well, shape changing into the bear or to the hawk or to the wolf and everything. So if we look at the wolf, Spirit of the Wolf, that's speed. Yeah. That's where I see maybe you having maybe your heal over times be more effective. And if you're in the bear form, your direct heal would be more effective. They would have a higher outburst, a higher crit rate, and
more protection to the group itself.
Exactly. So you know, there's definitely ways to utilize the pet form and not necessarily touch on DPS, because I'm also on the same side. the Druid should all be about healing. Just like, the Cleric should all be about healing, and the Shaman should all be about healing. If people want to engage in doing DPS, play a DPS class.
Yeah.
You don't see tanks going around saying, I want to heal. Or wizards running around saying, I want to tank. Well, you do, but that's just it. Healers are there to heal. Tanks are there to tank. Scouts are there to do melee DPS, and you've got your mages who do their range DPS and stuff like that. So and everyone to their own. If you want to do DPS, play a DPS class. It's that simple. These are healers.
I certainly would rather focus the changing or the animalist druid to be more of a buff and enhance class. As well as being able to heal as a druid.
Yeah.
I don't see a druid being a pure healer, though, because it has to balance out nature. It has to enhance and utilize nature for the group itself. And that would make the druid even more interesting.
So I can definitely get on that side of it, where the animalist druid would be more about the utility and buffing its group and everything and helping out that way. So, but on the note for druids in general, because you said you just mentioned a very interesting point here, not being all about the healing and everything. Would you even see the druid having lesser heal spells? So instead of having like a arsenal of 10, 15 heal spells altogether, it would have like maybe 3 or 4, but because of the utility through the shape-shifting and everything, that's where the enhancement comes. Is that how you would kind of like to see that done?
Definitely. I think where the healing I mentioned earlier, where we have buffs along with actual healing itself. So in that way, when you do some sort of an AoE spell, as an animalist druid, you're also using the buffs of that animal itself to enhance the group, ultimately. So that's what I see.
Yeah, definitely. I can get on board with that one. So, Shai, you got anything to add?
Not really. You guys have touched basically on all the bits and bobs that I had. So.
Cool. Josh, introduce us into the seasonal druid. This is really interesting.
All right. Well, the seasonal druid gains power from the changing of the seasons. The druid is more of a direct damage druid, gaining power from the seasons and gaining new spells depending on the season itself. The druid can also buff the party, controlling the seasonal changes and healing based on the seasonal changes as well. So, in this regard, it would be great to see that druids actually gain unique type spells based on the quarterly periods within Terminus. So you've got the winter, summer, autumn, and spring, and how that maybe within the spring period, their healing would be more powerful for it, and the summer period would be more powerful. The winter, it might not be as powerful, but it creates more of slow type spells, or its spells becomes
It goes more over to the utility during autumn, winter.
Yeah, exactly. And that way, I mean, you could have things like using seeds, exploding seeds, for instance, during the spring periods and things like that. So in that way, the druid will be quite, I would say, quite tricky to play, but it would have some unique spells that will benefit the druid.
So I got one for you.
Yeah.
What happens for those zones or dungeons that aren't affected by season, that have maybe a magical aura or some kind of barrier that keeps it from being affected by that? How would the seasonal druid function there?
Well, then I think Dayhawk, it's a funny dude. I think that then the actual druid would just get overall spells to cast as a standard generic druid.
Yeah.
So I think that's what would happen if they are blocked off from their seasonal period.
Well, you could also maybe have the druid kind of like harness again. It has like a buff that you would cast in, Avendir's Pass. It's currently springtime. Cast that spell, you hang out there, do your thing. Mm-hmm. So during the evening, your friends plan to go into a dungeon. Mm-hmm. You've got to go and harness all that energy to take with you.
Yeah.
Maybe. So you could have something like that as well, where you kind of like have a
focuses.
Where you focus on that energy. And obviously it has a time period. It expires. It will deplete at some point in time. That adds to the challenge, yeah.
So in summer you could have something like a sunburst where it heals everybody around you, but also does more damage against undead, for instance. Mm-hmm. Things like that. But I can see it being quite annoying to play, because maybe it'll work on maybe Dungeons and Dragons or something like that. But in a game such as this, imagine if you're going on raiding and you're using the one spell, and all of a sudden you don't have that spell that was helping the group as much going forward. All of a sudden you might affect how the raid ultimately acts now.
Yeah.
So it will be quite challenging, I think.
But I think seasons in general, though, for the archetype, could be of interest.
Yeah.
Having something where, depending on what season it is, this kind of connects to the weather and climate as well, where you have an impact on how your spells are going to affect your group and your party and yourself, depending on what kind of season it is. I could see that maybe being something as well, just for the pure archetype.
Yes.
So that's definitely something I would like to see. And that's another big question though as well. Will we have seasons in game? Will we have it snow? Will we have it become autumn? Will we have it become winter? And then obviously it's going to be a question of how long do these seasons last as well? Because for something to be utilized for a class to be effective and fun to engage in, there would have to be a certain period of time for you to kind of use that. And then it's a question of is everybody happy with how long a season would be for because this class in game for this class to also keep its fun factor going as well. But it's definitely something I would you can even add it in period. You could have the 4 seasons, and they could be different kind of buffs that you would cast, utility buffs.
Yeah.
So season of the winter, season of winter. Maybe you get a little buff that keeps you from the chills, stops you from getting cold.
Exactly.
During the spring, it could have something to do with hydration, or summer, where you get like a little buff that keeps you hydrated, so you're not affected by any of the heated climates and so forth. So there's definitely ways to implement stuff like this also in the normal factor. But the next one is definitely a very interesting idea. I really like this. I can't wait for you to get into this one. So the next archetype or subclass, that Josh had was the regional druid. Talk us through this.
All right. So this I'll shamelessly say that I must thank Pathfinder for this, because they did a great job on this. But the regional druid, where a druid can actually pick a region that it wants to specialize in. So you could have an aquatic druid, an arctic druid, a blight druid, a cave druid, a desert druid, a jungle druid, a mountain druid, plains druid, swamp druid, and urban druid. So you have all these various types of regional druids that they can specialize in. Now, the good thing about specializing in a certain area is that your spells would be enhanced within that section, and you could probably buff the party to allow them to have normal run speed or walk speed through these type of areas where they might slow other groups down. So if you are in an Arctic region, for instance, where your speed might be pretty slow, going through snowy type areas, when you're with an Arctic Druid, you will be able to move through that at normal speed. And I would also say that you would not be able to feel the cold as if you are in the presence of an Arctic Druid. So you get certain resistance buffs that you would be able to get within those regions.
So I would go a completely different route with this one. I wouldn't even see it as a subclass. This is something I would love to see in game, where you have these different kind of, really old druids, like we talked about with the monk.
Yeah.
The monk. We have different, different types of people out there in the world, or and whatnot, that you have to go out and seek out to gain knowledge of that. That's why I kind of would love to see something like this happen, where you have a druid that lives in the caves, or is somewhere hidden in the desert, or up in the highest mountain, in the cold area, or some druid sitting in this voodoo hut deep in a swamp.
Yeah.
And this is also a way to kind of learn and pick maybe certain specializations. So you would go to the swamp, and maybe he has something that gives you an ability for an AoE heal.
Yeah.
As an example. Now, the Arctic Druid, on the other hand, that you go and seek out and wander and speak to and gain knowledge of, has something that would affect you with the weather and climate, maybe giving you a buff for the group or something like that. So that's how I kind of would love to see. I would love to see regional druids, period, in game.
Yeah.
For the druid class to go and seek out, and maybe he goes there to learn about the environment. They don't necessarily have to give you a buff or a spell or an ability, but maybe they give you a hint on things to look out for in certain environments, in certain regions. Give you some tips on how to combat certain things, maybe. Something that, there's something to kind of engage the druid into the game itself more.
Yeah.
Like there's something for the druid to do on his personal note. I'm going to go out and seek out some Arctic Druid. And you can even add perception into this as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Like
Perception would definitely play a big part in moving through these areas and finding the clues to finding masters within these areas. Yeah. So I do think that it'd be quite simple to keep track of regions and how you could set it up. I mean, I think it'd be fairly simple to, when you're creating the world, to say, well, this area is going to be the snowy or the Arctic areas. These areas are going to be desert areas. These areas are going to be urban areas type of thing. So, I don't have a problem with them being able to focus on that type of thing. It's just making sure that you create enough of a uniqueness to each druid within these regions to make them likable.
It's like, you could even have these druids out there that, if you have a druid in your group and he's gone and seeked out this druid in that region, he gets a buff that's for the entire group, or he gets an enhancement and stuff like that. So it's another unique way to kind of clash yourself out amongst each other as druids. So the one druid doesn't, so you're going to have a harder time going into this region with your group, or for yourself. It might affect you yourself. Whereas the other one, he's got that. He's already gone and seen him, so he's gained the knowledge, or gotten that insight, or gotten that spell, that buff, that that little enhancement. And it's just to touch on, like, similar to the orders that we talked about on the monk. That's how I kind of see. You have these really wise druids throughout the world that can enhance you in some ways than the other. So your final one is the Druid of Gaia.
Yeah, for this one, it was basically purely healing type class, where it focuses on those AoE heals. So the power, everything that the Druid does is based on focused on nature healing and healing of the group. So this would be the most powerful aspect or subclass of the Druid when it came to using any spells and powers with enhancement of that healing aspect, which is something you'd probably go for.
Yeah, you know me too well.
Exactly.
Yes, that's I could see that. That working. Because for me, it's all about being the healer, and that's one thing I really was happy to hear from Joppa when he's mentioned that each tank is going to hold his own and be able to be the tank for a group.
Yeah.
Same with the healers. Each healer is going to be able to heal just as effectively as the other, but they're all going to have their unique style and twist to it. So they're not all going to be the same. They're not going to, so the direct heals from the shaman ain't going to be as powerful as the clerics, but he has other abilities that are going to be more effective. And the same goes with the druid, and vice versa with the cleric. So they're all going to have their each unique playstyle. And the same goes with rezzing. What kind of res would you like to see a druid be able to res?
Yeah, I would. I wouldn't have a problem with the druid rezzing. How it reses, though, I think it would use some sort of a nature totem to be able to res, some sort of a powerful type of nature enhancement, to be able to do it, though.
Yeah, it would have to be a physical item. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like I know that in some of the druids, they would have like some sort of a seed or acorn that they keep on them, and they use that acorn to res the class, type of thing.
But what kind of res ability would he have? We know there's some combat resing, where they can res during combat, where they have like maybe a buff or your mark, So
I'm not sure.
In the resing,
yeah.
Where would you see him or the druid itself have its disadvantages and advantages?
Well, the disadvantage, I think, for a druid would be that it couldn't probably res in combat, type of thing. I think that would be its disadvantage. I think the advantage of it would be that it could probably do a group heal, a group res, to res everybody up afterwards, and could probably res himself.
You're touching on the Cleroid, dude. Healing after death.
Yeah, exactly. Where he can raise himself, type of thing.
Yeah.
If he has the some sort of an animal around, type of thing, the animal would come over, and like the animal would then use its life force to raise you as the druid. Shame the poor little animal dies, but hey, you live, and you can raise everybody.
I can actually see that working. You have an NPC just wander by. It's a bear or a snake or something like that. So it's a nature beast. It comes along, and you get rezzed up. I could see that actually working. And the negative of it is basically that
it's not fair to the animal.
Why not? The animal wouldn't die. It would still go on about a business. But the thing is, what would happen is, though, if once you res, you might be unlucky and aggro that beast. snake or that bear.
Okay,
So
I'd be fine with that. I mean, just the way you said it sounded like there'd be a little snake coming along, and you go, "Oh, I have to res this guy." Bzz, goes the snake.
No, but I could see.
Thinking, God, that's not right.
I'm definitely on board with no combat res, because for me, the druid would require like a rain dance kind of thing to bring your spirit back up from the dead. And it would definitely require some kind of physical item, some bones of a dead animal or something like that, or an acorn, like you said, or a seed, or a feather of a special bird or whatever, to actually be able to res you.
Yeah. What other aspects of healing would there be?
What do you mean?
I'm just saying, is there any other areas of, for instance, that a cleric might have that the druid, or what would be unique for the druid over a cleric and a shaman?
Well, the thing is, it's really hard for me to compare, because the way, with EverQuest 2, you had it was clearly defined where everybody had their unique ability. You had the Templars and the priests, or the clerics, the Templars and the Inquisitors. Their uniqueness was the indirect and the direct heals that they had, the group utility that they had.
Yeah.
The the Shaman, Mystic, and Dirge. They had the warding. And they healed through wards, so they would cast a ward on you that would absorb for so much damage. And then you had your druids that were specialized on heals over time. Now, we've heard in a few streams from VR that the cleric's going to have different abilities. You might have a small hot. You have maybe some direct healing. You might have some ward absorption and stuff like that. So it's kind of hard to define where would the... For me, if I had to put it down to anything, I would look at it for speed. I would go for speed.
Okay.
The cast times maybe are super fast. The reuse timer is super low. That's why I see maybe the druid having an advantage over the shaman and the cleric. But again, that's something also that I would balance out with the stance as well. The kind of the spirit animal that you kind of
correct
ponder towards. So that's why I see him having his oversight over the other two, by being able to have spirit of the wolf, spirit of the bear, spirit of the hawk, and depending on what kind of animal it's, or spirit of the tree ant as well. And then depending on what it's got, it will have its advantages there. Over the other, so speed and stuff like that. Yep.
No, that's cool. I like that.
Anything else that we haven't touched on though for this? No,
I think I'm also quite curious to see how the druid is dealt with on an aquatic level. Because I think a druid should also be able to use the water as well to be able to enhance itself.
Oh yeah, good that you brought that up. I also see,
swimming.
Yes, swimming maybe, but also as well with food and drink. It should have maybe a buff that the cleric and the shaman don't have, because they're all about nature and everything. So they're gonna have a high knowledge of what you can eat, what you can drink from nature. So they might have a better spell that enhances or gives you fluids and keeps you from dehydrating over the shaman and the cleric, for instance. So I could see that definitely come into play. Underwater breathing.
Yeah, exactly.
I could see that going towards a druid, where you have a druid in your group and you can now breathe underwater because it understands the element.
Exactly. So definitely, I think those are advantages you could have in over other classes.
So one more thing I want to talk about though, which will also be a show we'll be doing on, I think not next week, but the week after that, we'll be doing a show on this. But I want to touch on this real quick because it's part of the Druid. Now, in EverQuest 2, I don't know if it was done in EverQuest, you had the Druid wings.
Oh, yes.
Transportation. Should a Druid be able to teleport, or open up a portal to a Druid ring where the group can go through, or itself?
I know you're gonna dislike what I'm gonna say now, but it's so cliched. It's so cliched about Druids having Druid rings and things like that. If Pantheon is going to be unique about what it wants to do with the Druid, I honestly wouldn't even go that way. I think fast travel itself like that may be something I wouldn't like to see.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not too sure, to be honest.
So I definitely agree with you. I do not want to see Druid rings where I can open up a portal and we go to a Druid ring. If they do have Druid rings in there, let it be something where I can go as a Druid, and if I've gone to that Druid ring, I might get a little buff or something like that, or get some wisdom about the zone. Maybe I could study the statues, the rock and everything to learn about that zone. Maybe the ancient Druids carved information about that zone. So if I've collected or gone to that Druid ring and studied it, I gain insight into that zone, that area. Maybe that's what I would like to see. Now, on the travel aspect of things, what about maybe being able to call upon nature's creatures? Just to and not something that you can do for long distances, for very short bursts. I can call a bear. Hey, Mr. Bear, come over here. I want to ride you. As a means of travel.
And for a Dayhawk, hop on his back.
But could you see something like that maybe happen?
Yeah.
He'd like that way too much, though.
I think so, definitely. I'd even go as far as to say that maybe a Druid could also phase through, for instance, trees for a short distance. So it could use a tree to actually do short distance type teleports.
So you've been watching Lord of the Rings, dude, where you got those freaking major tree ants with the hobbits on its shoulder. Boom, boom, boom. That would be cool, though. That would be cool. Turn yourself into a tree, into a massive tree ant, and the group can get on your back, and you wander through that. You wander through Avendir's Pass, and get yourself and the group moving forward.
No, mine was more a case of if you've got a tree at point A and a tree maybe 30 yards away at point B, the Druid could possibly phase through that tree and come out the other side of the other tree.
Gummy bears.
Yeah, so it would be able to move through nature.
God, that's
like a squirrel.
Yarn. That is so old school. Oh my God.
Dude.
Oh, don't even start singing that. Oh God, I'll have to kill
bears.
Both of you. Okay, you are now dead to me. You are now dead to me. I will find you and I will kill you.
Oh, dude, that's too funny.
Yes.
On that note, Boomer, if you're watching this, Druid stuck in a tree.
Oh, now you're really dead. She's gonna come after you.
Yeah.
I don't see it.
I don't see. I don't want to see. I don't think.
The only thing I'd love to see about the Druid would be that it can enhance movement speed.
Exactly. If it's got
through difficult terrain.
Exactly. If you've got like Spirit of the Wolf, or the seasons, or the regional aspect of things, the weather and climate, because we do know that they're going to have a direct impact on, or some kind of impact on weather and climate We know that's going to happen.
Yeah.
In what form and fashion they're going to go, we do not know, but that's going to happen. So, forms of travel, basically, leave it to Spirit of the Wolf. Something along that line. Let's call it Spirit of the Cheetah. Let's go with something different. Spirit of the Cheetah, where you now get a buff that gives you a enhancement in run speed, and maybe for the group.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe a group buff that you can cast, and then the group has this speed buff for 30 minutes or whatever. I think in EverQuest it had a longer period.
An hour, I think. I think it was an hour.
And so something like that. They do not give them means to teleport
No.
or open up portals so that people can go to these Druid rings. If somebody's going to do that, that would be a summoner. That's why I see a summoner or a wizard kind of utilizing that kind of thing. Because that's another topic I want to get into at some point pretty soon as well, as a summoner. After listening to Joppa on that one as well, it definitely was very nice to hear what he had to say, where it's not just focused on... Sorry about this, guys, my eyes are watering. I'm crying. So sad. It's not just focused on magical weapons that the summoner can cast, or food and drink, stuff like that. It's actually other things, like maybe even a hint of pets that he could summon, elemental pets and stuff like that from a different universe, or parallel universe and stuff like that. So yeah. Shai, you got any questions from chat, or ideas, or thoughts, or concerns, or anything like that came out through this?
My concern is that Exmoco knows the words to the Gummy Bear song. That is a major concern of mine, and I'm starting to worry about him.
Hey.
Okay, we do have questions.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, no, you guys actually answered a lot of them over the course, so they've been sending me messages, deleting them. So we're down
delete.
We're down to about 4.
Okay.
The first one is from Coach T. Shh. What do you guys think the Druid's iconic ability will be? I think it'll have to do with changing the environment to help the group or to punish the enemy.
Yeah, we touched on the iconic abilities at the very beginning of the show. But looking at it from that, I could also see that being something. And that's one of the things that we talked about on the first discussion of the Druid way back then. Was being able to manipulate that to either benefit the group or have a impact on the encounter itself. So that could be a possible iconic ability.
It could be. I'm just thinking, do you think VR would have something more physical? Just like the cleric's got the invisible shield that it can throw up type of thing. What would the Druid have in terms of that?
Well, basically, you have a wind chime. Maybe call upon different kinds of weather. Maybe that's the iconic ability, that he can change the weather or the climate at a blink of an eye, basically. So,
or summon storms.
Summon storms or something like that. So, something like that, basically, is what I could see. And it doesn't always have to be something physical or visible that you see. Just having like a wind chime ability where you're, where you got this Indian wind chime going, and then you change out the weather or call upon a thundercloud. That was a great ability. I loved that spell in EverQuest 2 for my warden. I could actually call up thunderclouds and have lightning bolts, burst out from those clouds and do an AoE on the encounter. It's pretty neat spell, actually. I really like that.
Yeah. Okay. Hope we've answered the question.
I hope so too. The second question is from our very own Nomad Black. With Druid healing being indirect, how do you think they'll implement healing party members? I'd personally like to see a siphon-type healing modality instead of a clerical divine healing ability, using natural magic to attack and heal the party via siphon dot or AoE effect.
Yeah, definitely. I also touched on that as well. I think that siphoning from nature around you to keep that balance is going to be key. So I would love to see that if you're going to be healing, that you actually ensure that you have enough nature around you, be it a spell that you can cast to maybe gather roots and that type of thing, and ultimately keep the nature around you going, while you can focus that healing energies on your group.
Oh,
that's how I see it.
All right, so we're gonna go into a bit of fun and games here right now. So, we talked already about the gummy bears, indirect healing. I was just listening to what you're saying, Josh.
Oh God!
Siphoning like roots and stuff like that, having roots of plants on you. So,
I'm going mute.
So, anybody heard of the Care Bears?
Care Bear stash.
You are officially dead to me now.
Exactly. You indirect heal. Got this like plant on your chest. Oh, sorry, I'm getting there.
Yarn. What the heck is wrong with you? You are so warm.
Yeah, it's one of those moments. Yep, 3, 2, 1, stare, exactly. Off you go.
Now I have this image of you sitting there rubbing your belly as you're casting your spells.
He's not rubbing
it
something
is
else.
not a good visual. It is not a good visual.
Dayok, get on that. Stat.
Okay, question 3. We're changing this now. No more Care Bears. Again, from Nomad Black, and if you bring Care Bears into this, I will find you and I will hurt you.
Why don't we bring in Nature Smurf as well then?
Yeah.
You are all in so much trouble right now. You just wait till
what's in that coffee I've been drinking today? Jesus Christ.
So Nomad would like to know about, what do you think about a healing spell that binds and sucks the health from the enemy and redirects damage into heals or dots that is in turn distributed to the party? Boom. And I believe that was already somewhat answered.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's touched on the Necro, doesn't it, with Life Leech?
Yeah.
It's a very tricky one. We kind of talked a bit about this kind of thing already with some of the possibilities. It's one possibility we definitely gave earlier on, but it's definitely one that's more directed towards the Necromancer, because again, harnessing life off an NPC and giving it back to the group or to a single player as a heal is obviously an indirect heal, but it touches on damage, and that's a last resort for a druid. He would not. He would try and talk his way out of a situation before going towards violence. So,
or avoid a situation before confrontation. So yeah, I definitely see that being part of like a Necro's repertoire of spells, ultimately, where it uses damage to heal.
Yeah.
I would definitely keep it for that side of it.
And you guys have created monsters in chat today. Thank you so much.
We try.
I noticed. I'm just so lucky with you guys. Final question from Glenn. What if druids have a foraging skill where they can find food, or a divining rod ability to find water?
Yeah. I would actually go as far as if I would put something like that onto their pet class or the animal that they can summon, for instance, or that can have an ability to go forage for the druid itself. So you can send it out and go find roots, go find X, Y, and Z and bring them back.
Okay. So we talked a lot about pets today and everything, right, Josh?
Yeah.
What if the druid doesn't have pets?
Then he's not a druid. Then he's a cleric.
No, but honestly, no. But honestly,
what if he's got imaginary pets?
Could you see a druid though without pets?
Yes, I could.
And what would he look like?
Um.
Or not. Let's just go with pets. Let's go with pets and the spirit form.
Yeah.
Does a druid have to have those abilities?
No.
And how would it look like? How would it differ? What would be the big difference between a druid without having that at their disposal, and then looking at it from the indirect healing perspective?
I mean, the way I saw it is that you could still be a druid without your pet. But when you summon your for instance, if you're healing something, and you throw your big healing spell, you could summon the spirit of the spirit hawk or something to come and give you that extra boost, and you would have like a temporary vision of a spirit hawk that comes down and goes over the person that you're healing.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can do it without having an actual pet.
Yeah, you could definitely. I can see a druid that focuses more on plants as its primary focus.
Yeah.
Right.
Where, yeah.
Oh no, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say where it uses plants to enhance the group through holding thorns and variants of those type of things, trees, etc. And it doesn't really need the animals to boost it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I was going to say that. I mean, I could even see if you're casting a damage dot of some sort, you could have like spirit boars come out of the air and just run towards the mob and disappear. So I mean, you could still have the pets without actually having them.
Yeah.
So, I got one for you as well. Gosh. What about the pet or the druid being able to call upon nature to aid it? Like swarm pets, kind of like, it calls upon tree ants that go off and start attacking the encounter. Or wolves, a pack of wolves that come out and help it.
Well, I would say that would be that could be its iconic spell ultimately.
Yeah.
If it's that powerful to summon nature against the enemy.
In that respect, though, if that would be something that would be the druid's iconic ability, I personally would like to see it be an animal that's in that direct area that you're in. So if you are underground in a cave or something, you would have like a swarm of bugs or earthworms or something. Yeah. And then if you're up above, you could have a herd of deer fly in, a herd of deer run in and attack the mob for you. Just something that fits the area rather than the all-purpose, where the heck did these things come from?
Definitely.
That's always annoyed me with some things.
And again, and it's one of those abilities as well where I say, not every environment or zone has to have the ability for me to cast that spell, that iconic ability. Obviously, it shouldn't be something that is useless. It should be something that I can utilize, like calling on bugs, nature's normal animals and stuff like that. But there could be some situations or some zones where I can't call upon an animal. because there isn't one there, and I'd be perfectly fine with that. Another one to talk about as well, real quick, because this was kind of something that they had in EverQuest 2, was being able to charm certain animals. You know, like elephants, bears, wolves, lions, stuff like that. You could charm those, and then you would have a short duration as a pet for you. The problem what I saw there, and what really just bugged the hell out of me, was it became a useless spell. Because all the way up to level 50, yeah, there were animals like that all around. But afterwards, expansion after expansion, it became all about, you know, mystical, magical beings, elemental beings and stuff like that. There was hardly anything you could charm anymore. So it became a renderless, useless spell. And it's something that I think would be pretty cool to see, where you could, but more as a CC crowd control, rather than me turning it into a pet that I charm. It's kind of like, you know, I can put that animal into a gaze of something. I can put it like in mesmerize it. We have this, you know, this horde of bears running at us. I can cast this spell that kind of puts us off its scent.
Yeah.
Kind of like de-aggroes. I mean, that could also be another iconic ability as well. Something where, and this would only affect the Druid kind of thing, where his aggro range is, his aggro radius is widened, it's bigger, or actually shortened. So, not bigger, it's shortened. So basically, the animals would have to get really, 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 really close towards the Druid for them to actually pick up its scent and see it as a threat.
Exactly.
So what's going on in chat there currently, Josh?
We have one more question, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay. One more
Josh,
question.
I saw that.
Good name, Tarzan, LFG.
Josh.
Fruit and berries.
Do I need to put you in timeout now? Oh my god.
Echo Druids. What the hell?
Well, Zanya said that Druids should be natural.
Shy. I'm going to give Josh a benefit of the doubt. He's representing Alexa as best he can.
That is true. That is true.
I'm trying.
All right.
I'm trying.
Yeah, you are trying. Yes.
But what's the final?
The final question is from Glenn. Surprise!
Okay.
Please ask.
That's all the time we've got. Sorry, Glenn. We'll have to
We'll
come
have
back
to
next
answer
week.
that question
sorry,
next
Glenn.
time. That's it. We're out of time.
So Glenn would like to know if we could please think about what weapons armor that you think Druids should have, and epic weapons included.
Go watch the original show. We answered that in that one. Weapons. Well,
weapons, I would see anything wood-based. Definitely. So your staves, your.
Actually, Dave's got a very good point there. I know. I actually said it.
Yeah, shame. You must be tired. Gets claws as weapons, possibly.
I like that idea. You know, something having to do with the animals again. Maybe he could channel an animal spirit, and then he gets the ability to slash with his hand.
Yeah, exactly.
That's while you're thinking about weapons, Josh. Now we know the shaman's going to have some kind of influence on alchemy. So I could also see the druid, not necessarily for his weapons, but maybe for, you know, other people in the group, harnessing the poison off a snake and giving that to, you know, the rogue or anything on his weapons.
I could just see them grabbing a snake and going,
by the neck,
milk it.
Yes, exactly. But no, honestly, that's what I kind of would see them being able to utilize.
Yeah.
From a visual standpoint, you know, they could take the venom off of an animal and put it onto the weapons. But go on, finish your thought on weaponry.
Yeah, so I'd say anything that a druid has traditionally used, such as shillelagh, a sickle, a stratus, and elgage.
Shillelagh.
Shillelagh. I think it's called something like that. I don't know the exact pronunciation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shillelagh.
Irish
Okay, there we go. Shillelagh. But yeah, things in those areas, but not swords. Not they can have shields as well.
Yeah,
I think. But I don't know if they should be able to deal with anything metallic. Nothing metallic.
Yeah, they would use, you know, all the natural resources at their disposal.
So they can use bone as well.
Yep, stone.
That would be kind of cool.
Bone
them
and
to use, like,
stone.
bone weapons.
The raw materials, mithril and stuff like that to enhance
Exactly.
them. The thing is, though, in normal cases, you're always going to be limited to a certain type of weaponry. Druids normally have, or healers in general would normally have maces. It would be kind of cool to see that be different. You know, you could still keep to the, you know, the blunt weaponry, for instance, but only certain types of weaponry for, you know, each type of healer. So, you know, where the cleric might be able to use a mace, the druid won't be able to. He'd have to, you know, deform to some other kind of weaponry. Because, you know, mace is normally of metallic material, the head. So he would have to use something else.
Yeah, I think that in terms of armor, I would say shields, anything that is beneath metal type armor. So you would have leather armor, hide armor, bone, wood. Yeah, any type of bendy type of stuff.
So on your note with wood, you're kind of touching on the shaman there a bit.
Shaman has.
They do overlap a little bit.
Remember the shaman
Not much,
reveal
but a little
in the newsletter where they talked about Peter Pan, Captain Hook, Rufio's rough boys. They actually wore wood as armor.
But isn't the shaman? That's the halfling.
Was it the halfling? Or was it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the halfling.
I think it was the halfling.
Yeah, it's the halfling. Yeah, sorry. Okay. Yes, I'll give you that. But wood, yeah, definitely. I can't see them wearing chain armor. Definitely not.
No.
Definitely, you know, plates completely out of the question. Unless you want to go completely wild and turn it into a battle druid. But yeah, leather. You know, the natural resources again goes towards that. And because of it being swift and something that is very agile and fast as a class, it would have to have very light armors to be able to move about and have that agility and endurance as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And representing nature.
So with that, guys, I think we've talked enough about the druid for today. Obviously, once VR reveal more on this class and go into more detail and what their vision is of indirect healing, we'll obviously have a follow-up show for this. And the same as with all the other classes. Next week show we'll be talking with we're sitting down with Basgrim, talking about you know, the PAX experience, looking back at PAX, talk a bit about that, and get some more insight from there, how the event was for VR in general. That'll be next week, and with that, thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you all next Friday. And Tuesday, don't forget, we'll be having Tavern Talk, where we'll be touching on the community side, we'll be looking at Scribble, Pixel Debauchery on Pantheon Radio. We'll be looking at Pantheon Radio, Terry Talks, As TV, Sacred, Basgrim TV, Monster Koala. We'll be looking at all of those and talking about what they're all doing individually for their shows, where to reach them, and yeah, that will be on Tuesday. And yeah, definitely a special thanks to Frogzor.
Oh,
for being a special person.
Thank you.
And have a great
That's
weekend.
sweet.
And we'll see you all on Tuesday. Tuesday, don't forget though, as far as I remember, we haven't changed the time. So that's still 4 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday when we'll be doing the where we'll be doing the tavern talk. With that, guys, have a great night. We hope you enjoyed the discussion here, got your minds going for some further thoughts on what indirect healing could happen, and what possibly the Druid could possibly do.
Agreed.
And a big
Guys,
shout out again. We have to mention Zathras as well. He's our mod in chat, taking watching out for you guys. So thanks again, Zathras, and Nekrios. Thanks for putting the document together, making us look a bit more professional and keeping us kind of structured. We appreciate it, and we'll see you all next week when we sit down with Baz and talk about the PAX experience. And yeah, good night, everyone.
Okay, guys.
Good night.
Gummy bear.
Bounce.